So we had a little bit of a scuffle last week. Now, if you follow us on Instagram, you saw it because I posted the live stream of me and you reading all the comments and reading what this woman said, and we talked about not talking about it because we don't like to fuel the flame. I like to fuel the flame. You don't like to fuel the flame. You're more wise. You're much more wiser. So much more wiser than I am. So much more wise than I am. You have so much more wisdom. I've said that so many times. But I think it's good for us to talk about because basically what had happened essentially was I want to ask two questions. How do you, because actually I got a lot of DMs and a lot of people asking like whether they're pastors or different organizational leaders, like how do you handle when people call us a cult?
Yeah.
That's one thing, right?
Yeah. So this person with 1.3 million followers
yes.
calls me a cult leader and calls Mosaic a cult.
Yeah. It was like a really short, it was the post of the geniusof.com billboard outside of Mosaic, which is across the street, not on Mosaic's property.
And so she was making it sound like this billboard's on church property, which
yes,
it's not.
It's not. Mosaic's been using it for the last like 3 years.
Yeah.
You rented it, put your book up. But even if you didn't rent it and put your book up, who cares? It is a project that is ultimately leading people back to Mosaic and Jesus.
Yeah, and actually I didn't put the book up. We just put the Genius of. Which is a project that we're doing leading up to the Genius of Jesus.
Yes.
And so we wanted to make it mysterious because we're going to later adjust the sign where it says the Genius of Jesus, but we wanted to provoke people. We wanted to build curiosity, interest, and so put the Genius of.
Yes.
And
so 1.3 million followers. She posts an actual post, not a story, but an actual post on Instagram, where it was the photo of the billboard with like a hand painted what is it they call? What do they call? Like an X'd out, like a circle with an X through it, essentially, and posted it to 1.3 million followers. One of the people on our team showed it to me on Friday. It kind of killed the day, kind of ruined my day.
Yeah,
it sucks. It's never fun when you're dealing with like critique and open public critique, and it's also not nice when someone tags that stupid Instagram about sneakers and then calls us a cult. Basically,
it wasn't really a critique. It was slander and
libel.
It was malicious. Yeah,
yeah. Which I've been doing some Googling about at what point does it cross the threshold of actually being like a violation of your reputation and slander, which she did. So we'll maybe have that conversation later. Basically, then what happens is, so me, I screenshot it, I post about it on Bad Already story. Then I go and comment on hers and basically just said, hey. I wrote something really sarcastic and kind of snippy, basically saying like you're selling Sugar Bear hair products or like it was called Sugar Breaker, some other like knockoff thing. And you're mad at us for advertising a podcast / a book that's coming in September 14th. You should buy it on Amazon now. You're mad at us for advertising, but that's all you do is advertise. And so, I wanted to like make some like really backhanded comment about the show she used to be on because I actually was a fan. You were a fan too. We both liked the show, which was the funny part. But also, so whatever. I posted it, then I posted in the story like my comments, then I posted a bunch of people who were commenting on hers, trying to defend us. My thing is this: at the end, she switched her
she changed the whole story that she wrote.
Yeah, the whole, what is it called? Like the
comment? No,
not the comment, but like
her caption.
The caption. So it went from like this is a cult to then I used to go to Mosaic off and on for 2 years, which no one knows her from our team.
I didn't even know. I didn't know her.
And then all of these like claims about like your inner circle, our inner circle, and our team's very small, so it is smaller. But all of these things, and so basically you're a cult leader, and that it's like hierarchy, and that it's a monarchy. Like you're basically the ultimate authority, and there's no one else in XYZ. It was just tough because you're very organic, you're very open-minded, you're very like inclusive too about like how you make decisions, how you do process.
In fact, you guys are always like, hey, you need to call a staff meeting sometime soon.
Yeah, I think maybe the bigger issue is that she knew someone who used to work at Mosaic, and so I think probably just not good stuff was said, and then people were hurt, and hurt people hurt other people. And
yeah, I will say one thing that I think is kind of awesome about Mosaic from this.
What?
Yeah, she has over 1 million followers. She was on a hit TV show.
Yeah.
She said she came for a couple of years. And here's the amazing thing. I don't know her, and I never knew her.
No.
And so anyone who would ever accuse Mosaic of being a celebrity culture.
Yeah.
Here's proof that we're not. Because if she was a part of another church, she would have been best friends with the senior pastor. She would have been, she would have been brought into the inner circle. But
or another organization because with
I just never treat people differently.
No.
I don't even know when famous people are at Mosaic.
No.
That's what's so interesting.
No, and we've had like really incredibly famous people who've come in, and it was a huge step for us to just even engage, because for the longest time we're just like, hey, do your thing. But then it became kind of hard when certain people come in the door and they would get bombarded by people or like weird stuff would happen, because LA's kind of weird, Hollywood's kind of a weird little town. And so whoever wants to be famous, Mosaic genuinely doesn't. The people who are actually Mosaic generally don't care. We have a lot of guests that come every week. So that's, I think, the dangerous part from out of town who are like, I'm going to take a photo. So over time, it was like, hey, like, let us know if you want to like come sit with us, hang out with us, XYZ. And it's so funny because I remember when this happened, we like staff and wherever used to just sit wherever. He was in the back, he was in the front. There was no like rhyme or reason. And then when I came, I was like, hey, the worst place to sit is right in front of the drums, because no one can hear anything. Our sound system kind of sucked. Like our room is really weird. So you're like, the stage isn't very big, so the drums are really close to that section. So I was like, let's reserve these 2 rows and have our whole staff and staff family sit in the worst part, so that the experience is better for everybody else. The moment that happened, people were like, this is the exclusive section, it's VIP, it's reserved. I'm like, we're literally saving you from from hearing loss. But we're the bad guys. Okay, it's interesting. So perception is often optics. Optics is a very dangerous thing, an interesting thing.
So anyway, I didn't know that she used to come, and I didn't know she was angry with me. And I didn't know I'd ever knew her well enough to hurt her or offend her or create a crisis. But anyway, she wrote some pretty horrible stuff. And but I think that and she put, we're a cult. And I thought it's fascinating, because if we were a cult, she would have definitely have known me. And
if we were a cult, we were a really bad cult.
I'm just really bad at it. And so now that I didn't know, I said, is she a Christian? Because she used the word cult. So I looked at Instagram, and there was no mention of Jesus anywhere. So I didn't know that she was a Christian. And I found out from her second post, I guess, that she,
that she used to come to Mosaic, that she was,
and look,
trying to stop us on behalf of like the goodness of God and all these things. Yeah, she's a crusader.
But in it, somewhere along the way, someone actually sent like a verse from Jesus, to love your enemies. And
like commented on our post.
Yeah, about if you love the people who love you, it's it's one thing, but Jesus saying to love your enemies as you love yourself and everything like that. Yeah. And then you commented back, she's not my enemy. And that person misread that, and
well, I don't know. You're projecting intention.
Okay.
You think he misread it.
Yeah.
Because I was like, he responded. I said, hey, she's actually not our enemy.
But then he goes, laugh out loud. Like,
LOL. Okay, brother.
Yeah.
Well, you're not my bro.
And so I'm going, I think he misunderstood, because he thinks you're saying, no, I don't feel obligated to love her since she's not my enemy. And what you're saying is, nah, she's not my enemy. Don't put her in that category just because she said something untrue and something, because she said something hurtful, or that doesn't make her enemy. I mean,
well, okay, there's a couple things in this, right? No, she's definitely and absolutely not our enemy. Then I said something, I wrote something down in my notes because I wanted to talk about it on here, because I think it's important. Like, just because, and I want to say this, like, shout out to the almost 7,000 followers we have on Battle Ready Podcast Instagram, because we just took down a giant. And not that we took them down, but as we humiliated them, or like we ruined them, or we killed them like David and Goliath. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that I was very proud and impressed at like the tone, the wittiness, and also like the ability to defend intelligently
and kindly.
Some people were a little tough, but I was a little tough, And then I wrote down this thing. So 7,000 people were greater than 1.2 million, because I think the reality was that 1.2 million people did not care about this subject. They are a fan of hers. They care about her career and maybe like the fun stuff she posts, because she seems like a nice person. They don't care about the hate. And I think when we try to get people to care about hatred, we are actually misleading people. I feel bad for the 1.3 million people who had to see that on her feed that day, because only 5,000 people liked the post. So like, I don't know what that percentage is, Brooke, but a micro nano amount of the 1.2 million people cared about her hatred. It shows me, one, that humanity is good. That pretty much 1.2 million people want her to be positive.
It was off-brand for her too.
Yes, which is crazy.
And I think probably the people who follow her expect her kindness and expect some positivity and things like that too. And
yeah, because it's literally in her name. Like literally in her name.
Yeah.
I wrote this down. I said, I don't do enemies. This is something I probably have some. I got to work on it. But I think this is like a thing I want to live by. I don't do enemies. Enemies are for weak-minded people who can't solve problems. Yes, of course, there are people you don't prefer. I don't prefer fast food, but I don't go to it and then say it's awful. That would be counterintuitive. I just don't go to it. I don't talk about it. I don't judge people who do it. In fact, I just forget about it completely and move on. I give it as little emotional and mental attention as possible. I don't do enemies.
I love that.
Thank you.
But I feel like you've grown to that place.
No, yes, because I used to love enemies. Because I loved conflict. And then you can become addicted to conflict.
Yes.
And I think that's maybe one of the worst addictions ever, because you're conflicted inside of yourself, and for so long I think I was, but then you're conflicted inside of yourself, and so then you want conflict with others. So you're always looking for conflict, not for the good, the peaceful, the joyful, the beautiful, the truthful. And there's so many things in the world that we can hate. And one thing that you've taught me is that stop focusing on the hate, focus on the positive.
Yeah.
Don't focus on the things. Don't be about what you're against. Be about what you're for.
Yes.
Can you just do what you do on that statement?
Yeah, it's interesting. In the life of Jesus, one time there were people who were not part of the 12 disciples who were casting out demons and healing the sick, or having a pretty interesting effect.
Yeah. And
the disciples found out about it, and they went to Jesus and said, "Hey, we can stop this. Just give us permission. We'll send fire down from heaven and burn them up alive." And Jesus is still working on establishing a culture of love.
Yeah.
And Jesus basically
said,
Jesus
did or God did?
No, they came to Jesus.
Right.
And Jesus said to them, "Hey, whoever's not against us is for us."
Yes.
And he's trying to change their mindset. Like he's saying,
Yeah.
And I think part of the problem is that we're more inclined to make everyone our enemy rather than make everyone our friend.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter is, it's best when you start your life from the mindset of, I'm for everyone, and you have to work really, really hard to convince me that I should be against you. And because I don't want to create that space in my soul to be against people.
Yeah, I don't. Because it's really and we talk about this a lot, how do you create valves inside of your soul, your heart, soul, and mind to release the bitterness that has built up? Yeah. How? Because I think, I know there's people who do not like me. There are people I don't like. I don't prefer. But how do you take it from you're my enemy, I hate you, to I don't hate you and you're not my enemy, but I don't love you and I don't like you, to I'm going to pray for you, I want goodness for you, but I don't want to be attached to the goodness, to then going, hey, you're a human being, you deserve all the good things in life. God loves you just as much as he loves me, and doesn't prefer me over you just because I don't like you, or doesn't prefer me over you over me because you don't like me, whatever. How do we get to that process? Because I think there's we need an AA system for violence, an AA system for conflict, because it how do you exist in a world where there's so much violence, volatility, and toxicity against, we talked about in the last podcast, vaxxers versus non-vaxxers, maskers versus non-maskers, but there's so much hostility. It seems like everything we do in this world creates a juxtaposition or a dichotomy or this divisiveness against each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just read this morning that there were 12 mass shootings this past weekend. that violence is erupting across our nation, that the level of crime and violent crimes have escalated to a record level. And we need to realize that we're going to have to go against the grain if we're going to be a people without enemies.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go against the grain if we're going to be a people who actually create a new world against racism and against injustice, against, brother against brother, family against family, friend against friend, neighbor against neighbor, race against race. It's ridiculous. And I think you have to step back and ask yourself, because I think in her second post she said, I was just so incensed, I'm so angry when I saw the billboard. And I thought, wow, I'm incensed when I'm faced with things like the sex trade and child poverty.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm incensed when I see like genuine injustice and evil and inhumanity. You have to have some kind of grading system of what is actually worth being angry about.
Yeah.
And I'm going, like, I read people and they get upset with other like speakers or other people like that, and Wayne Dyer was a really famous sort of a Buddhist speaker on PBS, and I never had a negative feeling.
What do you mean? Give more context to that.
Wayne Dyer was like a speaker. He was Buddhist on PBS.
Okay.
I'm picking him rather than Joel Osteen or something like that.
But let's pick Joel Osteen.
Okay,
I had a friend
yeah,
who was very liberal and also a believer, but also works in the corporate space. But like one time we were having breakfast, he was like, "What do you think of Joel Osteen?" I've never met him, but I've met his kids and I like them, and I've met his wife and she's beautiful and lovely and intelligent and all the things, and I don't prefer necessarily a Joel Osteen message, but I don't prefer to go to other churches either. So like I'm not out there looking for the best content. He's fine. Like he's positive. He's doing exactly who he is. He's positive. He's happy. He's joyful. Oh, he doesn't talk about sin or death enough. Like hell. And I'm like, bro, you live with your girlfriend and she doesn't even believe in God and you're so far from perfect. Why would you judge him? Yeah, because he needs to believe. And I'm just like, my goodness, we're so skewed sometimes.
It's a self-loathing. This was going to be.
Why is that?
I would hear so many negative things about Joel Osteen. All from Christians. Mm-hmm. Then I would go into meetings at Paramount or meetings at CAA or meetings at Warner Brothers, and everyone would be non-Christians. And then they knew I was a pastor. Yeah. So they'd say to me, "Hey, do you ever listen to T.D. Jakes or Joel Osteen?" And I'd cringe for a moment and I'd go, "What are they going to say?" And they go, "We just love them. We don't. How does someone do that? How does someone talk for 30 minutes and hold us captive?" And I realized, people without Jesus are actually less judgmental about these people than people with Jesus.
It's so crazy. It is so crazy.
And so I think sometimes we need to do a self-check as if you're listening and you're a follower of Jesus, like why would you use your energy to be against another Christian, even if they're not your cup of tea, even if they don't approach things the way that you would approach them?
Yeah.
Why be against a different kind of church or be against a different expression of faith? Like the thing to me is they're just really bad things in the world that we should be against and we should work at fixing rather than trying to blow each other up and set each other on fire.
It just doesn't make it doesn't make life better or more interesting. I've been talking with you about this a lot because I'm struggling being in a spiritual space. Yeah. And not my own spirituality or my own faith. Although I don't feel as close to God as I think I did when before COVID, or maybe even in the middle of COVID. I think depression has hit and frustrations have hit and anxiety and like exhaustion and all of these things and just normal human stuff, right? Like I'm dealing with stuff and just like so many people in the world are. And I think some people think just because you're a part of a church or maybe work for a church or your dad's a spiritual person and I have an incredible father, like you have an incredible mother, an incredible sister. I have a great, I'm engulfed and enwrapped in a great ecosystem and environment of positive spirituality. Mm-hmm. And yet I think it's so biblical that you still can struggle. You still can have a hard time.
Absolutely.
I love being affiliated with Mosaic, but I know that my reputation, my past, my actions, my candor, the way I speak, the volatility, the toxicity sometimes has been on from me. Mm-hmm. And I know that Mosaic being affiliated with me is harder for Mosaic than me being affiliated with Mosaic. Mosaic has a great reputation, despite whether being called a cult. And I think we got to get to the cult part at the end. But I struggle with it. Like, it's easier for me to be a McManus Gallery, to be a part of Pagan USA, to be a part of Battle Ready. Even though Battle Ready is still like Mosaic adjacent, we're trying to brand it by its own thing and still be like a friend of the church, but not necessarily in the church.
We don't hold Mosaic responsible for everything we say.
No. And it's like you can still be at Mosaic and disagree with us on Battle Ready. But I really struggle with that space, and a lot of it is because I do feel that the church space is so volatile. Like, I went to dinner on Friday, and one of my good friends leaned over and was like, "Hey, are you okay?" and he had asked me how my week was like multiple times. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good, good." Introducing myself to people, saying hi. He like leans over, sitting next to him in his booth. He's like, "Are you okay though?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." He's like, "What happened?" And he doesn't. He's gonna go to Mosaic 100%. We've just gotten closer during pandemic, and he's like, "What happened with that woman?" And I'm like, we're used to celebrities trolling us. It's funny, it is what it is. But I'm like, he doesn't get why there's so much hostility.
Yeah. Well, I read both her comments, the one she wrote first and the one she rewrote, and I went through and I read all the comments of the people. And my immediate thought was, oh, wow, they don't know I'm a human being.
Yeah, they don't care.
And that's what struck me was that maybe if they really knew I was a human being, they wouldn't like do that. Yeah. And I think that when we actually know someone's a human being, we're less likely to make them our enemy and be as destructive. And so I try to posture myself that no matter, like, I still see her as a human being, and I refuse to see her as anything less. And I can genuinely say that I am here in this moment. I have no bitterness toward her at all.
Yeah.
And that the only emotion I'm projecting toward her is love. And I know that sounds crazy, but I do think that's where Jesus has taken me in my life.
Yeah.
And I love this mantra, Aaron, have no enemies. Yeah. And I love what you wrote about it, and I think that's a great aspiration for life. You cannot control whether someone sees you as their enemy, but you can control whether you see someone else as their enemy. And even like you wanted me to address the question of cult.
Yeah, like how do you respond to people who it's crazy though, because no one from out, maybe my friends say it behind my back, but no one says it to my face.
Yeah.
They're like wildly accepting of like that I go to church and I'm a part of church and that you're a pastor. Like they think it's so interesting and so cool.
Yeah,
but Christians are more judgy to other Christians than anyone else.
I think that a part of it for me is it makes me want to not be a pastor because I actually care about these things. I wish I had the personality that it didn't affect me what other people said.
Oh, it affects.
But I am really affected by it. And it really hits me and hurts. And but so I think really when a person is a cult, it can be one of two things. It can be a theological thing where you have bad theology and so you're a cult. But most people don't have good enough theology to know that. They just say it because they know it's a negative. It's an incendiary word. But and that's the thing. I'm going, okay, what I do know, as imperfect as I am and as imperfect as Mosaic is, I'm sure, as a church, we're all about Jesus. We believe Jesus is God himself, stepped into human history, lived a perfect and sinless life, died on the cross, rose from the dead, so that our sins could be forgiven and so we could have a life in him. So theologically, we're not a cult. And because the Bible really is the basis of our faith and our belief. And so then I think, okay, sociologically, like...
See, I don't even need to say all those things.
I know.
I know.
I'm saying it because I want to remove any ambiguity in that.
Yeah.
Because...
we should do a whole podcast on all the things that you just said to make people believe that you're legit.
Yeah, it's funny, but it wouldn't change it because it's not what I believe. It's that Christian thinking has become so thin that if you think deeply, you don't feel orthodox.
Yeah.
And then you can be a sociological cult. But like...
Wait, I don't just move on from that so quickly. I think thin thinking needs to be an entire episode in and of itself.
Yeah, I mean, frankly, if you stay in the conversation with modern cultural Christianity, you're going to be wading in ankle deep water.
Yeah.
And I understand why people like Jesus think that Christians are against science. I understand why they think that we're stupid and uneducated, because so much of our cultural response is not thoughtful. And there have been a lot of times I've felt like, I don't know if I can take this. I don't know if I can take the level of thinking inside of Christianity. I don't want to have an argument about a billboard with an actress. Like I want to talk about the deep issues of life, and I'd like to stop getting dragged back into the shallow water, and I like to go back into the deep water and think about things that matter in life. And
I have like my own thoughts about like I hate celebrities. I hate celebrityism so much. Like, and not because I hate celebrities. I think just because you have a lot of followers doesn't make you smart. Like Jordan B. Peterson's smart. Sam Harris is smart.
Yeah.
Right? Like whether you agree with Joe Rogan or not, he's asking really interesting questions. And if he's not, he's at least listening and having interesting people. Right? Like I really do not like the fact, and we live in Hollywood, and so I really struggle with it. Mm-hmm. I like New York better because it's what you produce and what you do determines how successful you are and how wealthy you are and how well known you are. A lot more powerful people than there are wealthy people. Mm-hmm. LA, there's a lot of empowered celebrities who are really unintelligent. I'm not saying this person is. I'm just saying it is notoriously the thing. We make dumb people famous. We make, like if you looked at a glance, you'd say the Kardashians don't have a lot of depth. They obviously have a lot of stuff going for them intellectually. I think Chris is a genius because you look at the success. They were famous for one reason, and then they've gone deeper and deeper and deeper. Cosmetic companies and businesses and empowering other people. And like you look at how many people they've made wealthy because they've done what they've done. So, but I'm saying we have the tendency to empower and to build up and to make famous really uneducated, really dumb people because they're on a TV show. Like if Aaron Sorkin was attacking us, we'd be having a whole different conversation. We'd want to have a conversation with that person.
See, and ironically, I don't think Aaron Sorkin would attack us because it would be beneath him.
It would, because he would see that it's tasteless.
Yeah.
And tacky a bit, or in Spanish, naco, naquísimo, like just tacky and cheesy. But what is it about us? And you get on me because you're like, don't respond. And I'm like, no, I want to respond because this one was an easy conversation, and I was hoping it wouldn't turn into like all the other things where it swoops in, like one person jumps, everyone jumps, and it didn't go there. She wanted it to go there, and I called her out for it because I was like, you're using every response, every educated, intelligent response someone had. She said that they were gaslighting and devaluing, and I said, no, you changed your post. You called us a cult, and you called us like, and then you said we were like self-glorifying, and now you changed it to you being the victim and the hero. And that you're creating a forum. And none of her people really backed her, like a few people maybe, but I'm going, how is it that like you're actually devaluing their comment when you're saying they're gaslighting? You're actually being highly manipulative when you're saying they're devaluing you. No, they're actually, I do find that like whatever generation this is, we live in a culture where we victimize ourselves to the point where you can't critique us back or you are now attacking a defenseless person. But she was the attacker.
Right.
She was the aggressor. And these are terms that I think we got to talk about because I'm not even familiar with the kind of millennial Gen X-y like TikTok language that's being used because they're old psychology terms that are now someone read a book and then made it famous on TikTok and now everyone uses them. But it doesn't mean they don't have value, but I think they're being misused just the same way that the word cult is being misused, And this whole weekend, I've been trying to think, like, how do I make cult interesting? Like, cause I'm like, because when we came back, I told you I want to retake the word church.
Yeah.
Because you hated the word church.
I never used it.
You never used it. Like I know she didn't go to Mosaic because you called it Mosaic Church.
Yeah. Well, I just know because of the description of her experience, and I think one of the dynamics is that when you decide to build a community of faith, in a area where people are deeply broken, deeply hurting, deeply wounded, you're going to have a lot of things happen in that culture where there's a lot of pain and hurt and brokenness. And I knew when I came here how dramatic it would be and how difficult it would be.
Yeah.
And I know that Mosaic is not the answer for everyone, so that would be one reason we're not a sociological cult. I know that there are other churches that are the right fit for many, many people who may even come and visit Mosaic. That's another reason I know we're not a cult. And we don't see ourselves as the exclusive place that solves everyone's needs above every other place. And I also know that I'm an imperfect human being, an imperfect leader, that Mosaic is an imperfect church because people are imperfect. And so the ironic thing about it is that there are thousands and thousands and thousands of people who have been helped through Mosaic. And so even if we failed people along the way, I'm sure we have, you can't give up just because you can't get it right all the time, or no one will do good.
Right.
And I think that's the bigger question is like, do we really want to destroy all the organizations and churches and communities that are actually trying to do good?
Yeah.
And you could look at any organization, whether it's UNICEF or Habitat for Humanity or, whether it's World Vision or the United Nations or whatever it may be. And you could easily pick everything they've done wrong or haven't solved the problem and it doesn't mean that you should devalue all the good that they're doing or trying to do. And that's what I would just say is, it's just another reminder to me that Jesus was so unpopular and unliked and always misunderstood and accused of things he never did. And I just wonder how many of us who call ourselves people of faith have accidentally moved into the same posture as the people who opposed Jesus. And I'm like, Jesus was perfect. He got it right every time. And if he couldn't get everybody to love him and everyone to agree with him, I don't have a chance in this world because I'm not perfect and I don't get it right all the time. And so this is my encouragement to everyone and to you too. Don't let everyone who tries to define you by your worst moments or your failures have more power in your life than the people who are encouraging you for your successes and your best moments. And let those voices have more power in your life. And so my declaration, I'm stealing your words. I choose no enemies. And I'm going to choose to live a life of love as much as I can because I care about what's inside of my soul, because you create out of who you are. And if you let bitterness shape who you are, you're going to create a world that breeds bitterness and hatred and envy. And if you allow love and grace and kindness and compassion to shape you, you're going to create a more beautiful and perfect world.
I also think it's okay to be wrong.
Yeah.
And I think you have to trust that God wants the best for you even when you are wrong. But you got to change. Like I'm telling you, like sometimes it's hard for me to change, hard for me to adjust. Sometimes it's like I have a low impulse control. So I struggle with decisions and how I see myself and how all these things. I think that's the biggest danger, right? Is you make a mistake and now forever you are seeing how you think other people see you rather than how God sees you. And then it's hard for me to accept sometimes because I feel like God has made my life so much better and bigger every time I've made a mistake and every time I've gotten things right. I've had to pay for mistakes and I've had to work for good things, but it doesn't mean that God wasn't all over both.
Yeah.
He was just there. I was whether I accessed him or not, I think. And so I think in this world, to know that like you matter and you have value, whether you're in the middle of the worst day or week or month that you've ever had, or you are in the best season of your life. And then also knowing that you play a part in other people's understanding and how they see themselves. Because I think that's something we don't think about. You said it earlier on that was so impactful. They don't see you. She doesn't see you as a human. And I DM'd her from Battle Ready.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we were fans of your show, and I know you don't like us and don't agree with us and don't have any interest in reaching out, but we'd love to have a conversation. And thank you for advertising us to 1.2 million followers. because whether you wanted to or not, you just made us more well known than before, and we didn't have to pay for it. So what we paid for the billboard actually got us 1.2 million people looking at it going, the genius of what? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's interesting because what was in her control, she made a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And with her choice, she would have probably never thought that there'd be 1.195 that would disagree with her and wouldn't like her photo. That only 5,000 people liked her photo of hate. But the rest of them, they're with us because they didn't respond. They didn't say anything.
Or they're neutral.
No, they're no longer our enemies, so they're with us, right?
Yeah,
Who's not against us is for us.
That's what Jesus said. That's good. I like that.
So I just, and that was the thing. I was like, look, thank you so much. And we were down to have a conversation. It doesn't change. And the difference is when we critique, I'm going to go to that person directly.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And give them an opportunity to talk about it.
Yeah.
So don't let hate stir.
I can say in 62 years of life, I've never used my public forum to say something negative about another human being. And if I have a negative feeling or thought about someone and it matters, I go to that person.
Mm.
And if I don't have access to that person, then I don't feel like I have the right to have that feeling. Or it isn't my business. And I just want us to keep doing that going forward.
Yeah.
And
right.
I think we're good.
I think we're good.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Love your enemies.
Love your enemies.
Don't have any enemies. Just love everyone.
And don't be an enemy.
Oh, that's good.
Okay, love you.
All right, love you too, bud.
Okay, subscribe to this channel on YouTube. Subscribe to it now. Goodbye.